Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. We've already tested out Goji and now it's time to try out BROLY, of course. I've recently just picked up his EZA. Funny enough, a unit I barely have dupes in. I literally only have one, and I'm pretty sure my first dupe came literally last year, which 2022 only just ended. So yeah, literally have next to no dupes in BROLY, just the one. Only recently started link leveling him once I found out he got his EZA, but do let me know how you find him down in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you're new. All the support is very much appreciated. And I'm curious about BROLY because obviously Gogeta is ridiculous. Like, he is now one of the new best EZAs in Dokkan. He's easily dethroned transforming Cooler. BROLY's not quite on that level. Not to mention as well, immediately we've got this BROLY with us just because his linking partners, I mean, he links well with a lot of actual like super class Pure Saiyan units, which is not really where you're going to run him unless you're on a Pure Saiyan's team. But in terms of his linking partners on the 200% lead with Final Form Cooler, because he goes on movie bosses and transformation boost, he doesn't really have great linking partners. Like, he links well with this BROLY, which is very good, but there's not a slot 1 unit then for him to go next to. You know, he has links like Saiyan Warrior Race, Super Saiyan, Prodigies, Prepared Battle, Fierce of Battle. I don't know why I said it like that. Prepared for Battle, Fierce Battle. Those are some very good unit links for link if you're going to be running him on a super class team, which of course BROLY isn't. So, you know, so it's a bit of a weird one, but turn 1 linked up with this BROLY, who we've only brought here purely for the video, and then I'm going to have him on rotation with this guy as a more realistic setup. He's starting with a 453k attack stat and 202k defense pre-super, which is actually very, very good numbers considering he hasn't even done anything yet. But after EZAing, he is a 170 lead, key +3 for movie bosses or full power, which is pretty good. On super attack, was that 4.1 mil? I literally just caught that at the corner of my eye. Was that 4.1 mil? If so, not bad, not bad. On super attack, he does greatly raise attack and defense for 1 turn by 50%, which is very nice. He causes supreme damage to all enemies, hence why his super attack stat probably was 4.1. Hence why his super attack stat probably isn't going to be too high, just because I think Dokkan, and I think we mainly saw it with Raditz when he initially dropped, considering how bad he was. I think Dokkan really overestimate like AoE units, so you know, his super attack stat probably isn't going to be too high, but still, the 50% attack and defense raise is still nice, especially defensively. On his passive, he's still getting that huge key +6, but now he gets attack and defense +150 at the start of turn. He also gets some additional attack and defense +120 and launches an additional attack. There's a high chance of becoming a super attack when facing only one enemy at the start of turn, which means he's going to constantly have an extra 120 attack and defense and that 50% chance of launching an additional super whenever he's facing one enemy, which is pretty much the majority of hard content in the game. Like, yes, he might not be viable for a lot of it, but that's Cell Max, the majority of red zone stages. Even then, he still gets an additional attack and defense +150, so he gets a little bit extra when facing 2 or more enemies, and also launches a guaranteed super attack when facing 2 or more enemies. So he's still a very, very good ESBR unit. Like, he will literally sweep the field when it comes to ESBR with how much damage you can do to all enemies, and also have pretty solid defense pre-transformation as well. So that's pretty good. We've already got the transformation off because obviously it literally only takes him 4 turns to do so. So pre-transformation, he's still looking pretty solid, but as I said, I think Dokkan tend to just, I feel like they think AoE units are a bit better than they actually are. But as I said, for ESBR, this guy's going to be an absolute monster. And while that's not, you know, the hardest content in the game, while that's not red zone, it's still content that's constantly being updated, including difficulty as well. So it is still viable. It's still viable. But now that he's transformed into full power, he does on super attack now raise attack and defense by only 30%. I kind of wish he kept the 50%, or maybe had one 50% and one by 30. But for some reason they just lowered it to 30. He's still just raising attack and defense by 30% on super. I mean, at least he's getting something though. He does also cause immense damage to your enemy and massively lowers defense. On his passive, he's now got key +8 and attack and defense +200% at the start of turn. We still have him pretty fairly linked up. And he's on a 612k attack stat, 612k attack stat pre-super and 218k defense, which is still pretty good. He also launched an additional attack that has a high chance of becoming a super attack, which is still that 50% chance, but the built-in additional is very nice, especially for getting the extra attack and defense raise once he's transformed. The extra 30% is going to be incredibly useful. 6.38 mil with only one dupe is still pretty good though. I'm not going to lie, especially because he does have a built-in additional, he's not an LR, so that's going to go up to like just over, what, 7 mil? If he does get the super, of course he doesn't. But still, the built-in additional and a 50% chance of it becoming a super attack to get the extra attack and defense raised by 30% is very good, especially defensively focused. And then, of course, if you have dupes in him, which I only have one, so it's not going to happen often, but if you have dupes in him, you can hit an extra additional and then raise your attack and defense by 30% again, which means you're getting closer to like 8 mil, which is pretty good. And not to mention, you're getting 30% defense raises, which is really going to help him out, especially because he has, well, what did we just see? Like, literally just over 200k defense there. So, you know, 30% defense raise, then 2, which is most likely to kind of what you're going to be getting on average. You're looking in the region of like probably maybe 500k plus defense, which is pretty solid. Obviously, it's not Gogeta levels of good, but there's clear disparity between the two EZAs. And if you manage to get the third, you're probably looking at like maybe 600k plus defense, or maybe a little bit less. Again, I'm not great with the numbers with Dokkan, I just throw out estimates, but you're looking at anywhere between, you know, from 2 super attacks, probably about 400k plus defense to 2 super attacks, or sorry, 3 in total if you do have dupes and you get the extra additional super off. You're probably looking at like 500k plus defense, which is still pretty good, which does mean in red zone, he is tanking basics from pretty much the majority, if not all red zone bosses for double digits, and super attacks, like a lot of other units in the game, he will be caught by a super. He will be taking too much damage on a super. You pop a Whis, he'll be able to tank the majority for somewhat well, but there's still like BROLY, and then probably like Cooler Core, who's still going to catch him a bit, but he probably won't die. So defensively, obviously he's not completely up to scratch to like red zone standards, but he can still compete, he can still be viable, but you are somewhat reliant on getting the extra additional super off if you do have dupes in him. And even then, he's a Fizz unit, so he does have 5 additional, but of course you're relying on something that will hardly happen if you don't have many dupes in him, if not none at all. We do have some support from Turles right now, pre-super, 661k attack stat. He does have 144k defense, but I can only imagine he had his defense lowered last term. The fact, I don't actually know if he did. He might have, but I'm not sure. But yeah, but still the possibility of him is there. He does have some viability. He's also getting the extra attack plus 200%, which is really going to help him on dealing some damage, of course. And he gets defense plus 100% when facing only one enemy at the start of turn. 6.8 mil, 6.89. And again, considering he has a built-in additional, you're going to do, what, like a 7 million attack stat straight after. A lot of the time, more often than not, almost guaranteed. Yeah, there we go, up to 7.19, just shy of 7.2. And then if you have dupes, of course, there's a possibility of hitting a third one where you're like, you know, 7.3, 7.4 million. But a lot of the time, you're going to be doing, you know, an additional, actually 7.49, he's actually almost at 7.5. But a lot of the time, you're going to be doing 2 supers in one turn more often than not, because of that built-in additional he does have in his kit. So he's going to be doing pretty good damage, and of course you're going to want to be hitting crits, so dupes are going to be very handy with that. But more often than not, he's going to be doing good combined damage. His defense is in a solid-ish spot. It's not the best, it's okay. And in terms of what else he does, you know, you get an additional attack and defense plus 120 in total when facing 2 or more enemies. So again, in ESBR, he's going to be very good. Like, very, very good. Like, it would have been nice if, of course, his transformation wasn't, like, guaranteed. Like, it was like an active skill transformation, and you got to choose when he transformed, because then you could keep AoEing with him. And then, you know, keep that in ESBR rather than being forced to transform. And even pre-transformation, you know, if you're hitting the additional super he has in his passive, and you have dupes, and you hit an additional super there, you'll greatly raise your attack and defense by 50%. Once, potentially twice because of the built-in super attack, and then potentially 3 times in total if you do have dupes in him as well, which means his defense is in a really good spot pre-transformation. And not only that, because he isn't an LR and he only has 1 12-key super or just 1 super attack, that means he's going to be doing very good damage while AoEing every single super attack he does, which is why I say for ESBR, he's going to be an absolute monster, And of course, if you do still play World Tournament, which it's good here and there, of course, to get, of course, stones for when you need them, you know, he's going to absolutely just make that a clean sweep and just, you know, the only thing missing from that is being able to auto-run World Tournament, but this Broly's going to be useful for it. And I'm not saying that to meme him, because he is still a pretty solid unit. It was a very solid EZA. But, you know, the AoE does help a lot for World Tournament. But an ESBR unit, he's a fantastic ESBR unit. And I'm still pretty impressed with his EZA, but considering how good Gogeta is, there's obviously a clear disparity between the two. I think we can agree. But he also launches an additional super attack starting from the turn in which the character performs the third super attacking battle, which means even before you consider dupes, Broly, once transformed into full power SSJ, that means he could potentially super attack 3 times, 6.89 mil run with almost every link active. And if you have dupes, you have the possibility of 4, which means the amount of damage he's doing combined in one turn is pretty insane. And especially if you have dupes and you can hit crits, the amount of raw damage he'll be doing to health bars is really, really good. So once you perform the third super attack in battle, I mean, we probably won't be able to see it properly here because, of course, we're doing too much damage. But once you do it, or once you perform your third super attack in battle, that additional super attack from once you've launched the third one, that's guaranteed. So at least every turn once you do that, he's launching 2 guaranteed super attacks, which means he's constantly getting a consistent attack and defense raise of 30%, which again means the amount of damage he's doing is consistently very good. Then there's also the possibility of launching an additional super, or launch the additional, which has a high chance of becoming a super attack that he has in his passive anyway, which means a lot of the time, or more often than not, you're going to be launching 3 super attacks in one turn, because that's only a coin flip chance, which means you're getting, again, a 30% attack and defense raise 3 times, almost the majority of the time you're using full power SSJ Broly, which means his defense is actually in a pretty good spot. You're talking like probably in the realms of, what, 400-500k plus guaranteed, maybe getting towards 600k. But again, the amount of damage he's doing is impressive, while again having solid-ish defense, which again, he's going to be tanking the majority of basics in red zone. Actually, no, all red zone basics for double digits. It's just the super attacks he won't be able to contend with without a Whis. And then when you consider you may have dupes in him as well, that's the potential of hitting a 4th super attack, which means you raise your attack and defense again. You're looking probably towards like an 8 million attack stat, but combined you've done what, 7, just over 7 mil, towards 8, just over 8 million. Can you imagine that those 4 super attacks combine the amount of damage you would have done? It's really impressive. Like, it's insane amounts of damage. Not to mention as well, again, if you have dupes, any crits you do along the way, the amount of raw damage done to enemies' health bars, Broly's shredding. Broly's doing insane amounts of damage, and the extra 4th 30% defense raise means his defense probably in the region of 500-600k plus, which doesn't really change too much for him when it comes to the harder content in the game like red zone. But the extra defense does help a little bit at tanking supers with a Whis active, so he is viable for red zone. It's just you're a little bit dependent on getting the additional supers off. But once you have the guaranteed one from launching the 3rd one in battle, once you've transformed him or once he's transformed into full power SSJ, Broly's kind of good to go. Broly will have enough defense to tank double digits on basics at all times once he gets that, and then it's just whether or not he gets the additional super attack in there with the 50% chance and the potential of a dupe, which even then the defensive buff isn't going to really change that much to where he's going to be tanking, you know, incredibly well on supers. The main thing it changes is how much damage he's going to do in that one turn, which, you know, in red zone you still need to do good damage to get in and get out. You need good defensive units to survive, you know, your God Gokus, your Orange Piccolos, you know, tech transforming Ultimate Gohans, etc. But you still need to do good damage. So Broly is amazing on that front once he's transformed, and especially if you have a dupe in him. But even without it, 3 super attacks from Broly is doing pretty insane amounts of damage, especially because one of them is guaranteed. But the possibility of a 4th, Broly's doing great damage. He's shredding health bars. It's just, it's defensively, that extra 30% defense raise isn't going to make too much of a difference by the time, you know, you're in kind of the later phases of the harder red zone stages. He'll be able to tank double digits, as I said, on the basics, which is very good, but a lot of units do that nowadays, kind of almost guaranteed. But super attacks will clock Broly. Super attacks will catch him. and they will do a decent amount of damage if you don't use a Whis. And even some of them, I said, like probably BROLY's final phase in red zone, cooler core, even with a Whis, he'll probably still take a chunk, but at least he'll survive. So all the people saying that BROLY was mid compared to Gogeta, I don't think it's true. I mean, obviously there's a clear disparity between the two. Like Gogeta is a lot better. Like he's now the new best TUR EZA in Dokkan easily. Like as I said in the beginning of the video, he's dethroned Cooler 100%. But BROLY's still very good. His EZA is still very, very good. Still very, very good. You know, BROLY might even do enough damage, especially if you're lucky enough for him to not be super attacked. BROLY might even do enough damage combined with the other units on the team to the point where you don't have to really worry about him getting super attacked because you've just shredded the health bar. Think of the units he's surrounded by. AGL Golden Freezer, eventually LR Golden Freezer, two of the best defensive units in the game, even Tech Golden Freezer. You have LR Final Form Cooler, who we've seen him, he decimates red zone. Especially if you have dudes, but in general, he decimates because of the amount of time he super attacks and the stacking and how good you can get his defense to. Then you have Transforming Cooler, who's very good for red zone, stacks defense, of course, before you transform him, has the amazing support. Tech Janemba, while not the best, if you get him enough orbs, supports, also has the guard damage reduction. LR Janemba, good defensively, good slot 1 unit. He's surrounded by a very good, well-balanced team defensively and offensively, and some very good damage dealers, specifically LR Final Form Cooler. The only thing I would say lets him down a slight bit. We're not going to get the support rotation from Turles because we're going to do too much damage by the time he de-transforms, but you're probably looking at, like, you know, close to an 8 million attack stat. If he gets all the additional supers, you're looking at almost getting to 9 mil, which again, combined amount of damage is insane. The only thing I will say that hurts him a little bit is he doesn't really have a slot 1 unit to go next to. So while he, of course, he links well with, you know, the Dokkan Fest Int BROLY, even this guy, a lot of the time when you take him on runs, he's going in slot 3 unless you let him sit in slot 2 to stack up a bit. So he's not going in slot 1. Of course, this BROLY's not going in slot 1. You literally get absolutely mollywopped. So you don't really have a slot 1 unit to put next to him. I mean, you do, but they go on super teams. So unless you're taking a 170, you know, pure Saiyans team, you're not going to get that. Like, he has 4 links with Birdcue, which is actually pretty good. But when it comes to, like, his 200% lead and running him on, like, movie bosses and around extreme units where he's meant to thrive, he doesn't really have a good linking partner where you can have BROLY in, like, on main rotation in slot 2 where he needs to be. So if you are going to be using BROLY, your best bet is probably putting him in slot 3 and letting him do his thing there, which a lot of the time you may be able to avoid him being caught out by super attacks here and there, but because a lot of them end up coming in slot 1, it's just what I've found to be in red zone. But even then, he can still be caught by a super attack in slot 3, but he would have to go in slot 3. He would have to go in slot 3. Unless, you know, every other turn, every other rotation, you just kind of, you know, BROLY isn't linked up well, and then you have like a Golden Freezer or Janemba in slot 1, and you just kind of run it like that and deal with it, and every other rotation, like, I don't know, Dokkan Fest BROLY comes around, or like the support from Cooler or Turles comes around, and then he like kind of performs a bit better, because of course he still gets that massive chunk of ki that he gets in his passive, ki plus 8, where you're never gonna have to worry about super attacking with him, but he's not gonna get any extra attack or any extra attacking defense from the links, of course, he does have. So that's the only thing. You're not going to be able to get that many links active with a good linking partner in slot 1. But considering he gets himself loads of ki anyway, you can kind of almost bypass it to the point where you run him on main rotation, but he won't be performing at his best. Or you can just run him in slot 3 when it comes to red zone. But he's still a very good EZA, don't get me wrong. But as I said, there's just a clear disparity between Gogeta and him. But he's still very, very good, and he's going to be an absolute monster when it comes to ESBR. Like, don't forget about ESBR, because it's still constantly being updated and the difficulty is still increasing. He is going to absolutely wipe ESBR pre-transformation and even post, because the amount of super attacks he can do. But let me know what you think about BROLY down in the comments. I'll see you in the next one, guys, and push!